Hey guys, and welcome back to Bible 365. I'm your host, Kathy Carter, and we are reading through the Bible in 365 days. So, for those of you who have never been here before, I would love if you went back to the beginning. But if you don't, if you want to start today we are in the book of Kings, and we are reading through the Bible in 365 days, 1 year, using the 1 year chronological Bible reading plan, which I found online at oneyearbibleonline.com. I have no affiliation with them. It's just a great free downloadable reading plan so you can read through the Bible chronologically, which means the way in which it happened, the order in which it happened. You can read through that in 1 year. If you have never read through the Bible before, from beginning to end, take your time. It doesn't need to happen in 1 year. It can happen in 2 years, but just stick with it. Stay with your reading. And then once you've read that day, then come here, listen to the video. And after you have your own thoughts, you can hear my thoughts. And then I'd love if you shared and commented so I can hear what it is that you read that God kind of opened up and revealed to you. So we are in the time of King Solomon. We are on day 143. It is May 22nd. And our reading today, it's a longer reading, but it's actually going to be short because it's sort of a repetitive reading. So our reading is 1 Kings 7 and 2 Chronicles 3:15 through 4. And so they're not identical, but they're very, very close to each other. And so I'm not even going to pinpoint any of the differences. Some of the differences are really minute. And Chronicles left maybe a little bit out that First Kings put in. So what I want to start out with is not this section, but I want to actually start out with what the books mean. So the books that we are in is the book of First Kings and then Second Chronicles. First Kings is written not long, or let me rephrase that. It's probably chronicled throughout all the kingdoms, right? So they have a recorder, much like we do now, right? We have historians, we have people that write things down as they happen, and then as they start to learn more facts, they compile it, put it together, and then we have history, we have textbooks, we have things like that, right? This is very similar. So during each time period, so to speak, there would be some recordings of the things that the Israelite kings were doing. And so it could be the person in the kingdom that was recording it. It could be one of the prophets that was recording it, right? So we don't know 100% for certain, but we do know that someone was recording and keeping the information. And this is how we got the information, right? So they would tell all the information that the kings did. So that was the book of Kings. And it goes over a long time period, as we'll see. It's in the neighborhood of like 200 to 250 years. The book of Second Chronicles is written also by a chronicler or a recorder. And what they did is this took place. So I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit because of where we are historically. What happens is all the kings live. And then at the end of sort of the time of the kings, they're taken over by Assyrians and Babylonians. So the Israelites are taken out. Some are left in the kingdom, but most of them were taken out of the kingdom. They're slaves. And they've been conquered by Assyrians and Babylonians. And then there's a time where they actually come back. And so the chronicler, we believe, is writing in the time after they come back. And so the chronicler is writing all the information that happened, that they recall, that they bring to mind, of course, through their readings and through the Lord. And so they write down all of that information, and then they give it to the people that are living at that time period. So they know a lot of the history. And then there's also some things where they're rebuilding this temple that they're showing right now that they're building. They're trying to rebuild this temple. So the information that's why I'm saying the information is maybe not slightly different, but some things are left out, some things are added in, right? So we just get a different type of information. So although mostly it's the same. All right, so we're going to start again in the book of First Kings. So we got 1 Kings 7. And here we go. It took Solomon 13 years. So where we've come from, King Solomon is King David's son. He is the leader over the 12 tribes of Israel. And what we have at this point is that he has built, it took him 7 years to build the temple to the Lord. And so we learned yesterday all of the stuff that he got, all the money that was spent, the way that the temple looks, the size of the temple, that it was inlaid with gold and all this other good stuff. So we know everything and anything about the temple. Well, after the temple was done, he then built his palace. And his palace encompassed a few things, because I look at this palace and I'm like, wow, you thought the temple was impressive. Like, his palace is outrageously impressive. And In building the palace, it took him 13 years. So it took longer. There's a lot that goes into this. This is essentially all that we talk about today. So really all I'm going to do is point out some of the things that happen, or some of the things that I find unique or interesting, or, of note. So it took him 13 years to complete the construction of his palace. He built the Palace of the Forest of Lebanon. Thought that was interesting. It's of the cedars of Lebanon, which, a little bit of a tale, I was in Lebanon, and so we got to see the cedars of Lebanon, and the people who were showing us around, who were Christian, because we went there on a mission trip, and the people were showing us around, they were very proud of their cedars of Lebanon. And so that's something they're very famous for. People go there to see the cedars of Lebanon. They're beautiful. And so we got to see these, and this was what his palace was made of. It matters because this was high end, so to speak. So as kind of, we would use that term, high end. It wasn't something you would get from, I'm going to say, Walmart, right? Like this was, or Home Depot. I'll put it that way. This wasn't construction. This wasn't wood that we're buying from Home Depot. Like this was the highest of quality of pieces. And they were just cutting down the trees, right? Because that was what they were famous for. They were cutting down the trees. They handled that. And then they would just send them down the river in order to get them to Solomon's people. And if you guys remember, it was all of the foreigners that were building all of these things. So he was using them as labor to build all of the things, all the foreigners that lived in the land. So it was called the Palace of the Forest of Lebanon. It was 100 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high. And that works out to be about 150 cubits, or I'm sorry, 150 feet long, and then 75 feet wide, and then 45 feet high, because it's about a foot and a half. A cubit is about a foot and a half compared to a foot, right? It's about 18 inches. So this was massive. Like this was such a, and again, I want you to look at an image, and I'm going to try to put an image in the comments, but this was like a massive piece of architecture, and it was made with high quality building ingredients. I'm not cooking, you know what I mean? Construction, whatever. All right. And so they have everything that was in there. And then it's so inside there, he has what he built. And this is in verse 7. He built the throne hall, the hall of justice, where he was to judge. So in his palace, in his house where he lived, was where he judged. People would come into the throne hall, and that's where he would judge. And that, again, it was with cedar from floor to ceiling. And it was set back, and it was similar in design. He also made a place like this for his wife. So remember, a couple of chapters back, he married Pharaoh's daughter, so an Egyptian. He made a pact with them, and then he made her his wife. And so he built a similar room for her to live inside this massive, great house. He made her something similar and massive and huge. And it said, all these structures from the outside to the great courtyard, from foundation to eaves, were made of blocks of high-grade stone, cut to size and smoothed on their inner and outer faces. So this is, again, all high-end stuff. So in verse 13, it says, King Solomon went to Tyre and brought Huram, which we met a couple of chapters ago, whose mother was a widow, and he came and he did all the bronze work. So if you guys remember, he was the one who was part tribe of Israel and part Tyre, part Phoenician. And so he did all kinds, he was a master in all kinds of work. And bronze was one of the things that he was a master in. And he made these, what I'm going to say is ridiculous bronze pieces. Like when I'm saying ridiculous, I don't mean like they're stupid. I mean, they're unbelievably huge and it's just something worth seeing. So he did these 2 bronze pillars, and they were 27 feet high and 18 feet in circumference. So, I mean, I guess we're thinking like White House kind of thing, or like a Lincoln Memorial. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but something like that. Like this was an impressive structure. And much like the if you guys have ever been to Washington, D.C., I don't know if any of you have ever been or seen or know anything about that. Much like those things are so impressive. And we have these monuments built to people that did really important things in and for our country. This was the same thing. The reason that Solomon had all of this done for him was not because he was so vain that he needed to have this. This was because he was the king over the tribe of Israel. Like he was, This was an important tribe. This was the chosen people of the Lord of the universe. I'm a broken record with that. But this was the creator, right? So this was the chosen people of the creator of all people. And so this was the chosen people group. And this was the leader of that chosen people group. So it was so ostentatious in some ways because of his status, because of who he was and who his people were and who he followed. So there's always, again, point and purpose for it. You know, I think I definitely talked about it yesterday. Sometimes financially, and especially now where we are, it's hard to look on those things and not say that people are being selfish or greedy or right things like that. Share the wealth and all of those kind of things. This was because of his status. We were supposed to look to him as if he was something special, unique, and important, right? He lived where he lived, not because he was a greedy son of a gun, because he was the king of the chosen people under the Lord our God, the Lord who made us. I know I drill that in you a lot, but I hope that makes sense. Okay, so he made these two pillars, these giant pillars, and I just want to point out that they had names, which, why not? Why wouldn't a pillar have a name? So they had names. Their names were Jachin and Boaz. And so these names actually had meaning. So one of them is, so Boaz, which is interesting because we read in the book of Ruth, we read that this guy's name was Boaz. And Boaz meant it probably, right? We're not 100% sure, but it probably means in him is strength. So that's Boaz. So this is representing the house of the Israelite people. In him, the house and Solomon is strength, right? And then Jachin also had a name, and that probably means he establishes. So he's building. And these things are great for the person, for the nation, and for the Lord. So these are all descriptive terms that kind of should be filtering down to all of the people groups that are involved, right? I say people groups, God, Solomon, and then all of his nation of people. So some of the other things that he made were this, and he made this giant bowl that was supported, and I'm saying giant, like it was like this. It wasn't. It held 12,000 gallons of water. So it was this massive bowl that held 12,000 gallons of water. And underneath of it were standing bulls representing strength, right? There were bulls, there were lions, there were cherubim, right? All the animals of strength, animals with a little bit of wisdom, right? It's not like there's like a bird in there, right? Like all of these like strong animals, and cherubim, of course, which is of the Lord. And so they have all of these things. So he made, this was this guy himself, this firm, because he also made 10 bronze basins. And each of those had like 250 gallons of water. Like it was overwhelming. So Huram did the two pillars, the capitals on top of the pillars, the stuff decorating it, pomegranates, which were all over, which were decorating it, 10 stands, the sea, which is what they call that giant bowl, pots, shovels, and sprinkling bowls. He made all of these things. And so he made all of this for the house. Again, probably why we're seeing that it takes 13 years. And then Solomon made some things. So if we go to verse 48, it says Solomon also made all the furnishings that were in the Lord's temple. So I think maybe I talked about it yesterday. Like we had the old tabernacle with the Ark of the Covenant. Where did all of that stuff go? Because there was a lot of things in there. There were a lot of things in there. Where did it all go? And it looks like, I actually don't have the answer to where it all went, because it looks like Solomon made all new things. So Solomon made the golden altar, the golden table where the presence goes, the lampstands of gold, the floral work, the pure gold basins, wick trimmers, sprinkling bowls, right? All of these things inside the Ark of the Covenant. So Solomon made all of those things. And then it said, when all the work King Solomon had done for the temple of the Lord was finished, he brought in the things his father David had dedicated, the silver and the gold and the furnishings, and he placed them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. So this is obviously a massive place. It's got treasuries of gold and silver and all of these things that David left to him. So David, before he passed away, he left all these things to Solomon. And all of those things went right into God's treasury to be used for that purpose. And then the ark was coming back where it was supposed to. He had he built all these new things to put in there. And so he's creating the temple to be made for all of the celebrations, all of the offerings, right? All of the fellowship offerings. So everything that is needed is now in this temple to be used for the people of Israel. So that's where we're ending today. I hope that was a blessing to you. I hope that was helpful. I still advise to look at a picture. I know there's a lot going on, and so it's a lot to think about and it's a lot to look at. But it's a good way to see the way that Israel looked then, and to see what's going to happen in the future. So, like this, share it, subscribe to the channel, and then ring that bell if you want to get these videos every single day. If you want to get notifications, keep reading, guys. I will see you next time.